Order. The House and Committee on the Government Communication Security Bureau and related legislation amendment bill is resumed. And the committee is considering the Minister's motion to divide the bill set out on SOP number 307. For some members who may not have been part of this debate before, let me just say this is the narrowest of all debates. It's whether the bill should be divided or not, and the debate should relate and pertain to those matters. The Honourable Trevor Mallard has the call. He's about 2.5 minutes remaining.
Thank you. And my first call, Mr. Chairman, and thank you. And I do want to compliment the Minister currently in the chair on the bill for at last getting the SOP which we're debating onto the table. I see that the Attorney General, the one with the various jurisprudential fetishes, is waving his finger around. Of course, he knows what that means. He gets off on technicalities. Well, Mr. Speaker, in this particular case, what we have is a motion to divide the bill, and a supplementary order paper to do that. But unfortunately, the ill-prepared, ill-disciplined and generally useless Attorney General, who was sitting in for the Prime Minister on this particular occasion, did not have the foresight to make sure that this was on the table of the House at the appropriate time. It's a pretty basic job of a minister who for the time being is in charge of the legislation in the House to ensure that this particular supplementary order paper that we are debating is available. And Mr. Speaker, it was not available. The Minister got up and moved a vague motion, and in fact it is interesting now, Mr. Chairman, that you have stated a motion which the Minister didn't state when he actually moved it. So we are in an interesting position now. But I accept that you have maybe, in your very generous way, done the work for the Attorney General in getting him back into line when he was so far out as a result of his lack of preparation. Mr. Speaker, I can accept, and I think generally on this side of the House we will almost certainly vote for the supplementary order paper when and if, tomorrow, the next day, whenever we get to the decision on it. But Mr. Speaker, we do so only to have a very disorderly bill, a little less disorderly than it would otherwise be, and to make it slightly easier when the people, well, I suppose it's mainly done online now, but when the poor people who have to go around sticking the amendments into the various hard copies of the legislation. Mr. Chairman,
Honourable Trevor Mallard,
to make their job somewhat easier than it would otherwise be. And Mr. Chairman, I think it is fair to say that getting this bill divided in the way that is proposed will be useful, because I think no one is, or everyone should be aware of the fact that this will be legislation that is looked at much more. I was going to say much more than a Fisheries Amendment Act, but of course with Snapper that's probably not quite the case. I think it will be looked at much more often, or these acts will be looked at much more often than will be the case for the general run-of-the-mill legislation which this House considers from time to time. Mr. Speaker, the proposition from the Prime Minister, and I will be interested to see whether the Prime Minister decides to take the chair for this particular debate. It would be precedent-setting. He doesn't appear to want to take the chair for any part of the committee stages of this. Of course, being across the detail of legislation is something which he doesn't want to do. But it is in the name of the Prime Minister, and what he is proposing to do is to drop out a number of words and to put in some new headings. And the heading, what it effectively does is divide. Sorry, what the headings do, Mr. Speaker, is to divide the bill into three. And it is exactly what we are debating, and whether, in fact, the title. I mean, one of the questions I've got is whether this is, even at this late stage, whether it is amendable. Well, I'm not sure. If one looks at the name of the legislation, the title is the Government Communications Security Bureau Amendment Act 2013. Mr. Chairman, I've had a bit of, like a number of people over the dinner break, had a look at at this area, and I can see that Magee is open, not far to your left. And I think, to be fair to Mr Magee, he should be right in front of you, sir, because to suggest that Mr Magee is to your left or to your right would be something. Well, although I think the last time we had this approach was from the Right Honourable Sir, just a slight diversion, Sir Robert Muldoon, before he was knighted. He declined to appoint Mr Magee to the Assistant Clerk's position because he didn't like Mr Magee's rulings, Mr Speaker. But that's not to suggest that Mr Magee should be placed to your left. He should be front. That's right. And the point that I'm getting to, sir, is that not only Magee should be considered on this question, but I'm looking for and cannot see that you have referenced Erskine May. Because, Mr Speaker, if we are actually going to look carefully at the appropriateness of this particular SOP, and what I've said is that we are, the opposition are ready to be convinced. If the Attorney-General can, or the Prime Minister, if he decides to take the chair, comes to the House and makes an argument, I'm certainly prepared to vote for the supplementary order paper. For the supplementary order paper only. Oh yeah, well, to divide it. Well, no, I'm prepared to be convinced. No, it's not a conscience vote. But the question is whether this will make a disorderly bill slightly more orderly than it would be if it would. It's a harm reduction. I'm not sure, and the depth of the debate around it, and the points that should be raised and should be looked at, and later on in my next call and the future calls, we can go more deeply into Erskine May. Although I think it is fair to say that the position in the British Parliament with the relation between the House and the committee is somewhat different. And while the attorney might think he's a lord, some of the detailed discussions that are had in the British Parliament, because is the attorney mute in the British? It would be a great thing. I know that the whips are mute. The whips are mute in the British Parliament.
Maggie Barry.
I move that the question be now put.
I will hear Grant Robertson.
Thank you very much, Mr Chair, and it's a pleasure to take a call on this